Hello, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is A Conversation in Jazz, where we are promoting jazz through telling the stories. Today we are presenting part 2 of our interview with jazz drummer, composer, educator, and leader of the band SUPERNOVA, Mr. Nasar Abadey. We ask you to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so we can let you know when we are posting another video or going live. We also ask you to donate to our Cash App in order to support the channel and help us to produce future videos. Our Cash App is $Jazzology 101. That's $Jazzology 101. Enjoy the video. Okay, we're back. This is A Conversation in Jazz, and we're talking to jazz drummer Nasar Abadey. Brother Nasar.
Yes, sir.
Man, very informative first part. Man, I want to start this segment talking about your son, Kush.
Okay.
Who is one of the young lions on the jazz scene today. Mm-hmm. As a father, how do you process what an amazing talent he's become?
I'm still processing it.
Okay.
Actually, Kush and I have a relationship that is very unique, and is the usual good relationship between father and son. Who
not all relationships are like that.
Who are in the same profession.
Yeah. Gotcha.
You know,
yeah.
Because I have other sons.
Yeah.
And we have all, as you well know, every one of our children are different. And because Kush plays music, then it is much easier for us to have this relationship that we have. He was home last week, excuse me, and there was a point where he and I entered into a conversation. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And Baiyina knew, okay, well, this is when I exit. She just left because, and we kicked it for about another 90 minutes, 2 hours or so.
Wow.
Basically, all we talked about was music and the things that we're talking about here. Kush is one of the easiest students I've ever had because of his abilities. His abilities surpass mine, which is great, because if you want to have your child to follow you in your profession, you want them to be better than you. Mm-hmm. They need to be better than you. As you reminded me of what Fred Irby would say, if you're playing this good next year, you're going to fail.
That's funny. Yeah.
You know, so Kush and I are constantly trading ideas. Uh-huh. But we're constantly turning each other on, and I have had a great life turning him on to concepts in drumming and music. It was when he was 6 years old that I put him into piano class. And he started studying piano at 6 years old. When he came home after his first class, after his first lesson, it was a simple song, but he was able to play the whole song. And that told me right then that, but when he was a kid, I taught him how to play a double stroke buzz roll with sticks when he was 18 months old. And I was surprised. And I just took his hands, and I took my hands, and I, motion, and I took his hands, and I did that. And next thing I knew, he was able to do that.
One thing that's good, and I'm gonna ask you this: was he the kind of son who listened?
To a degree, yes. Okay. But he's got his own mind still.
Okay.
He listens, especially after he experiences what you're talking about.
Gotcha.
You see, but
y'all went through a period where it was a little
Well, he's Virgo, and Virgos
Okay.
are very opinionated, but he's got an Aries rising, and Aries are hard headed. They've got to figure it out first,
Gotcha.
and then come back and tell you, Dad, you were right.
Gotcha.
So and so and so and so. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel better now.
Yeah, man. No, it's we still go through that.
But that's beautiful, man. But he's, I believe that the children whose parents were somehow musical or in music,
Yes.
that some of that stuff gets passed down, and they have an advantage.
Yes.
I mean, like Christian McBride, his dad was a bass player.
Great bass player.
Yeah, great bass player. Joey DeFrancisco.
Great organist.
Warren
his,
Wolf.
his father. Yeah, great musicians.
Chris Fun.
Right, same.
And I believe, even my oldest son Elijah, he's not a musician, but he's a producer, and he has some natural. I mean, he taught himself, and he has some natural stuff because both his parents are musicians.
Yes.
So I believe that, and you can and I want to ask you this: do you believe that this stuff gets passed down?
Yeah, I do.
In the DNA?
I do most. Well, see now, some people point to, man, Kush, man, he's this and that, and I guess he must have got it from you. I'm not the only one, because Frankie Dunlop, that's one. His uncle, Virgil, that's two. His grandfather, Baiyina's father, that's three.
Wow.
His grandmother, that's four.
Wow.
And then about a year before my father passed away, he shared a story with me that, see, my father did not want me to play in clubs. He didn't want me to be a musician. He wanted me to be a professional. Mm-hmm. In other words, he wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, somebody that wore a white shirt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, I'm a professional now. I just wear a white shirt on stage.
Yeah.
But my father did not want me to play because he came up in the streets. And he didn't want me in bars and taverns and hanging out and being exposed to the nightlife that he got caught up with before he became legit. Mm-hmm. And so, but just prior to his passing, he said, well, my father had a great voice. He sounded a little like, like Billy Eckstine, but not with the baritone.
Gotcha.
But he said I was too shy to be on stage. I'm just too shy.
Wow.
But if you sit down and talk to my father, he'd have you dying laughing. He was a natural comedian.
Wow.
Dying laughing, but he didn't want to get up on stage. But he told me that my grandfather bought him a violin. And he didn't like the violin. So he busted the violin up. Wow. And my grandfather came home and saw that he had busted the violin up. So he gave him a good stern whooping, beat his behind. He said, I always wanted to play the drums. That's when I found out that my father had a leaning towards drums, but did not take it seriously or even invest in the time that it took to develop the talent. But when we would be driving around in his car, and songs would be on the radio, and it was always the jazz station, he would always play on the steering wheel with his finger, and you could hear the finger, and you could hear the rhythm. I said, wow. Then I went back to that. I realized that, wow. So I also have the lineage from my father, who did not develop his musicianship. And so that comes down.
So Kush getting all that.
He gets all of that. He gets all. And then on top of that, when my mother-in-law lived with us for 17 or more years, because the last time she was with us for 17 years. Prior to that, she stayed with us a time before that when Kush was a baby, and we needed her to babysit for us because I was doing those things we did for young audiences. And Baiyina went back to work, to Howard University. And so, but Kush would always hang out with her and talk to her about stories, because she knew a lot of the older musicians. She knew Ella. She knew Bessie. She knew name escapes me.
Not Sarah.
No, before Sarah. Before Sarah, Billie Holiday.
Wow.
She rubbed it because she was a dancer, so she was on the circuit.
So she knew those. She was around those.
She was around those people because she traveled the circuit.
Wow.
Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, D.C., Richmond, and back up.
Wow.
And dancing and singing. Matter of fact, she danced and sang at the Cotton Club.
Wow.
And there is a book called The Black Book where her picture is on the opening page as one of the dancers, and one of her grandchildren said, "That looks like Grandma Day."
Wow.
And it was her.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, so Kush hung out with her and got all that information.
Wow.
He would just talk with her. And
so did he absorb like the information naturally, like what you would teach him? Was he able to
yes.
get it? Yeah.
One thing that we developed is anytime I was teaching anyone, he would come downstairs and sit and watch. Then there were times I'd be upstairs and I had a miniature kit for him that our friend Kenny Dickerson gave to him. Mm-hmm. It was a little small miniature kit, and he'd be working on it, and I'd hear him doing something, and I would go downstairs and say, "Kush, this is what you're looking for." And I would show him what, then I would leave him alone.
Wow.
That's how I taught him. I didn't teach him. I didn't sit down and say, "Well, man, this is the."
Yeah, gotcha.
And
Yeah.
that every time, most of the time, when I was playing a gig, he was with me.
Wow. Yeah. And we can't talk about Kush and yourself without talking about your lovely wife,
She's
Baiyina.
a great producer.
Now, I gotta ask Baiyina. She had to hear all this drumming coming from the basement. That takes a lot. That takes a lot of this, understanding. This.
Yep. Especially the way I play. Because I let it out.
So how supportive has she been in your life?
It's obvious.
Yeah,
it's
and
obvious.
It's a rhetorical question, but
Yes.
for the
It's obvious.
She
has been my rock.
Yeah,
She's been my rock.
And your love for her, I mean,
yeah, she takes care of my business. She takes care of the logistics. She produces my events, and I always like to say she's a great producer, and she produces great children.
Is she your manager as well?
She manages the band.
I always play with you every time. Not every time, but I say, you still in love?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. The love is the answer.
Yeah.
And
you say it's getting stronger.
It is,
yeah,
man.
Beautiful.
It is companionship with someone that's compatible with you. Everyone doesn't get it.
Yeah,
and
man.
we realize that we have
especially
it.
as a musician, to have a wife
as a musician
who really is into what you do and supports you.
Yes.
That's not always
right
in the deal.
It's not. And she came up listening to her brothers, because her older brother also wanted to play drums, but he didn't take it as serious as Virgil did. And so she'd hear them practicing.
Yeah.
And her mother did too. And her mother would hear me practicing every day.
So do you feel like a lucky guy?
Very. I'm blessed.
Yeah,
I'm
no
blessed.
doubt.
And I know that I am.
Yeah.
I remember one day her brother, when he lived here in Washington, he asked me how I was doing. And I said, well, man, this and that and that and this. And I wasn't complaining, but I was talking about all the challenges I had that I was facing and everything. Mm-hmm. And he just stood there and listened to me. And then after I finished, he said, well, I'll trade places with you.
Wow.
And that's when it dawned on me that,
yeah.
I'm very blessed.
I say it like this. There's somebody in the world that would love to have your problems.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. That's a great way to say it. That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. That's and that's just a beautiful thing, man. That to see a family that very supportive, and I know Kush gets that love.
Yes.
And I was just listening to Christian McBride.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing a master class, but he was talking a little bit about his history.
Okay.
And he was talking about the support he got from uncles, his dad, his mom, who was into the music.
Yeah.
And so That's very important
It is.
for young people when you know.
Yes. Yes.
Now, did Kush feel like he had some big shoes to fill? So did he have that pressure, like you said we were talking about Ravi, or or was he cool? Because he seemed like a real kind of laid back cat. And
Well, after he started touring, he started touring at 16. We had to homeschool his last year of high school when he started touring with Wallace Roney.
Wow.
And there were occasions, and it still exists, several occasions where we played on gigs together. My band, his band.
Yeah, I remember,
and then at the end, we'd go at it. He and I would trade.
Yeah. Wow.
We did it in Wallace's band a couple of times at the Congressional Black Caucus weekend jazz night. And we did it on NBC. We did it, and they had us bring 2 drum sets and go at it with each other. Kush, I know that I'm good. I know that I'm a good drummer. Mm-hmm. And I'm good enough where many of the trails he's on now, I've been there. Mm-hmm. He's coming back telling me that there are people he's running into. Yeah, aren't you so-and-so, son? I used to play with your father when he came through France and all that. But when we play together, he always holds back. I said, Kush, man, just eat me up, man. Just, let it burn, man.
Yeah.
He said, Dad, it's just so hard to do that, man.
Wow, that's heavy.
He just wants to show respect on stage. And I said, man, just go for it.
Yeah.
I'll step back. I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
And I used to always tell him that I can get your foot in the door, but your talent is the one thing that's going to keep you there. So you have to maintain your talent, and you have to project yourself.
No doubt.
And it's not going to come just because you're good. Mm-hmm. And that you have to have the personality that's going to make sure that you're there, and the talent that you're going to stay there.
Yeah, no doubt. Mm-hmm. Now, does he know, Antoine Roney's son, who's a drummer?
They taught him. He
really?
was one of his teachers. We met Antoine when he was with Wallace's band.
So Kush taught?
He's not the only one that's taught.
Okay, but he was one of his teachers?
Antoine, when he was playing with Wallace, used to come and sit on stage behind Kush's stool and just watch him.
Wow. Yeah. And he's another. He's blossomed.
He's another one.
Yeah.
I remember when I first met Kojo. Kojo was 2.5, 3 years old.
Wow.
And Kush hadn't even joined the band yet. Kush was setting in. I took him up where Wallace was playing at the Iridium.
Wow.
And Wallace invited him to play. And he was 15 then.
Wow.
And that's when we met Kojo.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, man. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So let's I want to go back now. You moved to New York City. Mm-hmm. You were living Buffalo.
Yeah.
What made you decide to go to New York?
Whew. Boy, man, I put both times that I left Buffalo to try to live elsewhere, I put the buggy before the horse.
Okay.
So when I was out in the Bay Area for a while, mm-hmm. for almost a year, not quite a whole year, and I wound up coming back to Buffalo, and to get some things together. Mm-hmm. And I wound up staying. And then on another occasion, I was in school. I was going to the University of Buffalo. And Charles Gale was one of my professors. Mm-hmm. Archie Shepp was one of my professors. Frank Foster was one of my professors. Mm-hmm. And I was a sophomore. And I wanted to be in New York. And I heard a record. And the record was Gary Bartz's Uhuru Sasa. That record with Junie Booth on bass, and the drummer by the name of Harold White that's from Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And I heard that record. I said, I can do that.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
I can play like that. Matter of fact, I can play like that. Mm-hmm. What am I doing here? So,
were you doing good, making money?
I was working in Buffalo.
Okay.
I always worked. I had no problem working in Buffalo.
Okay.
But it was too slow.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as fast as New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't able to pit myself against the better musicians.
Mm-hmm.
There were good musicians in Buffalo, but there weren't enough of them.
Gotcha.
And some of them didn't feel, some of them didn't understand what was really needed in the music.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been an edgy player, always.
Mm-hmm.
And the folks that gave me room to grow were the ones that I played with.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some that just didn't see that there is an edge and that we should be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this particular time, there were a lot of bands coming through Buffalo. Herbie's band, Miles's band, Art Blakey, Cannibal Adderley,
You got to see all these people.
Joe Henderson, Freddie Hubbard. I got to see all of them, meet all of them, play with them in jam sessions,
Wow.
set in with them, hang out with them.
Wow.
And that's when I started. Billy Hart, that's when me
Yeah.
and Billy Hart got close. I met him when he was playing with Jimmy Smith when I was in high school, but when he was playing with Herbie Hancock, you know.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Roy Haynes, and that's where our friendship started in 1970.
Wow.
And
That's a year after I was born.
that was that's what happens when I used to talk to Peter Betts. And Peter Betts said, "Yeah, man, in 1947." I said, "Man, that was the year I was born." Man. But and so I wanted to be in New York. And I remember this is why I always. This is a story that's very interesting. I always tell the story to my students, and I have been following this ever since, and it has worked for me, that you never know when you're going to be called at the last minute to play a gig with someone that can change the rest of your life.
Come on. Wow.
And I was in school, and you know how it is when you're in school. Sometimes
you in college?
I'm in college.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes you don't get to your instrument as much as you'd like to because you're so busy dealing with the scholastic academics.
Mm-hmm.
And so Freddie came through town, and he had Ndugu Chancellor on drums.
He had who?
Ndugu Chancellor on drums. And Ndugu was tearing it up. He was all over the place. And Freddie kept having to turn around and say, calm down. You know?
Yeah.
He did that for 2 nights. Finally, I came back on the 3rd night, and Louis Hayes was there.
Wow.
And Dougal got fired.
Because he was playing too much
He
drum?
was playing too much drum. See, with Freddie, there was a way to play with Freddie.
Gotcha. Was it a thing, this is my gig? Was it? You know,
True.
you know what I'm saying?
Freddie was Aries.
Yeah, okay.
You know, just like Stanley Turrentine, Aries.
Yeah.
It's my band.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, not on my gig.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Not now.
Yeah.
So, but Freddie had such fire. You were brought into the fire. And so sometimes you lose it. And Dougal was like 19, 20 years old. He was younger than me. He may have been younger than that. And he was happy, and he had all these chops, and he was all over the place. So he didn't know how to deal with Freddie. So Louis Hayes was the first drummer I ever saw with Freddie. I saw Freddie's band. The first time I saw Freddie's band, he had Louis Hayes. He had Kenny Barron, and he had
Ralph Moore?
no, way before Ralph. It was alto. Man, it's on the end of my tongue. I'll think of it. But Louis was on the gig. And so me and Louis started talking and everything, and he found that out. He said, "You a drummer?" I said, "Yeah, man." He said, "Well, man, you should come by the jam session on Sunday and set in. He said, because Freddie's looking for a drummer. He said, and I'm not available. He just had me to come in this quick gig because he needed somebody right away. He said, but I'm playing with Oscar Peterson. That's what I'm working with. He said, why don't you come back Sunday, man, and set in and play, which I did. And it was funny, man, because there were musicians that showed up with horn players, and they brought their horns and put their horns on the table, and they sitting there and everything. He said, okay, well, I'm going to call some musicians up that want to play. And so I went up, and
So Freddie's leading a jam session?
Freddie's leading the jam session. This is 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And Freddie's leading the jam session, and Lewis called me. He said, come on, man, come on. So I went up and sat down to the drums. Joe Ford, he sat in, and Paul Gresham, a tenor saxophone. We were the only ones that would say. And Freddie looked down and he said, well, man, all you cats are here with your horns. Why'd you show up with your horns if you're not going to play? They wouldn't play. And about 3 of them were trumpet players.
Wow. Yeah.
So they didn't play.
They were
so
intimidated?
we played.
Yeah.
They were intimidated.
Yeah.
So we played, and we burning up and everything. Now, flash back, when Lewis told me this, I had maybe a week away, 10 days away, had not practiced because exams were due. And I was studying for my exams, all that stuff. And so I said, this was Wednesday. I said, I'm going to practice every day and get my stuff together, man, and just bring my chops up. And so I'm loose. I'm not, my timing isn't off, all that. And I sat in, I played. And after I played, Freddie said, I like what you're doing. I love your concept. He said, but one of the things that you need to learn how to do, or you need to work on, and that's keeping the cymbal steady. No matter what you do, just keep the cymbal steady. He said, and I'll be talking to you, and that was that. So now the next time he came through town, and I found this out from my brother-in-law, Virgil. Next time he came through town, I told him, I said, you need to think about, there's another drummer here named Virgil that's out with Mingus right now. You need to think about him if you're looking for a drummer. Give him a call. And I gave him his number and everything. And so then the next time Freddie came through town, I didn't show up for the jam session. And so Freddie, after meeting Virgil, he said, well, where's Nasara? Because at that time I was going by Nasara. He said, well, where's Nasara? What's this cat named?
Nasara?
Nasara. I had the A at the end.
Okay.
Instead of Nasser. Because I started studying Arabic.
Gotcha,
I started studying,
Gotcha.
I started realizing that Nasara meant one thing and Nasser meant another.
Gotcha.
So he said, well, I was looking for Nasara to show up, man. He said, well, I don't know where he is, man. So I shows up at the club, and Virgil's sitting down playing. Lenny White was on the gig. Virgil's sitting down playing the drums.
Wow. He got the gig?
Well, eventually what happened is Freddie and Lenny parted ways, and so Freddie telegrammed Virgil and said, I want you to meet me out so and so and so. So it was out west somewhere. And Virgil got the gig.
Wow.
And maybe I would have gotten the gig, but Virgil told me, he said, man, Freddie was looking for you.
Wow.
He was looking for you, man. He wanted to, but when you showed up, he had already heard me, so he had 2 people to choose from, and
he got,
but that's, but I did on occasion, more than one occasion, set in with Freddie.
Okay. Now, this was in Buffalo?
That was all in Buffalo.
Okay. So when did you move to New York?
I moved to New York in late 71, early 72.
Okay.
And I stayed there till 73.
Okay, so you lived in New York for about 2 or 3 years?
No, it was close to 2 years.
Oh, close. Okay.
Close to 2 years.
What was it like in New York when you got there?
What
was the scene like? I'm sure that you had all the time, because New York had seasons. Like, it was a different, that time versus, when my generation, Roy Hargrove, that's a whole nother kind of thing,
right,
and whatever's going on today. But when you were there, what was the vibe like?
The guys that were hot when I was in New York was Lenny White, and Lenny Almazan, Eric Gravatt, both of them played with McCoy and with Weather Report. And there was another guy, a very young kid, 16 years old, by the name of Howard King, who played with Gary Bartz. Before I could get to New York, he started playing with Gary, because I went there to get that gig.
Gotcha.
And so Howard was hot, and I happened to live in a building with a friend of mine. I was rooming with the guy who introduced me to Joe Ford, Reynold Scott, and Reynold lived in the West Village, and I stayed with him and a bass player by the name of Gene Cooper, and in the building that we lived in, Gil Evans lived there, Billy Harper lived there, Freddie Waits lived there. Matter of fact, Freddie Waits let me use his studio to keep my drums in the practice. That's where I was able to, and that's what I tell his son, Nasheet, because Nasheet was 2 years old when I was there. And the scene was Herbie, Joe Henderson, Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw, Ron Carter, Richard Davis.
Was there music
all over the place?
And were you going out checking it out?
I was going out every night. Every night I would go out. I even bumped into Miles a couple times. I mean, literally bumped into him.
Really?
Bumped into him. I didn't know who he was until I said, "Oh, that's Miles." And it was Miles and Philly together. They were hanging out. Bumped into them.
Wow.
But I would see. You would run into cats. Like you still do. You still do that. You in New York, you run into cats here and there.
Yeah.
You run into cats. But I run into Jimmy Garrison.
Wow.
Run into McCoy. Run into Freddie. Run into Joe Henderson.
Wow.
Buster Williams. And when I got there, when Billy Hart found out I was there, Billy said, "Well, man, you in New York now?" He said, "We're kind of on the same level, man. So if you need a sub, man, just give me a call." He was there, but I said, "Man."
So you also got on that when you were in New York. You got on the avant-garde scene. There was an avant-garde scene.
It was an avant-garde scene
avant-garde
there.
Yeah.
But I jumped on that before I went to New York, because I was playing with Charles Gale, who was the avant-garde tenor saxophone player in Buffalo. And I mean, there were times when I wasn't the only drummer in the band. There were sometimes three of us.
Wow.
And then I played in a band with Charles Gale where Joe played piano.
Okay.
And there was a bass player by the name of Pappy Martin and myself. And Charles played tenor saxophone, but then Charles would say, "Okay, I'll play some piano," and Joe would take his alto, and so it was that kind of band.
And what was it about avant-garde that attracted you? Like
freedom.
It represented freedom.
Freedom.
Oh.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom and negroidal freedom. I mean, it wasn't something that was academic.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It wasn't, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and then once we do, Just like with Ornette Coleman, when he talked about harmonic, and people tell me, "Well, what's harmonic?" And most people didn't know. But harmonic basically was, if you heard a musician in a band play something, then you play something to complement that or to add to the conversation.
Gotcha.
But here's the head.
So there's a concept to avant-garde. It ain't just.
It's not just free.
Yeah, you just
It's not just free.
Yeah. Wow, that's heavy.
It can be. But generally, I've got on my two albums. The first album I play Ascension, John Coltrane's Ascension. On my second CD, Diamond in the Rough, there are two songs on there that we just started. And it was all improvised.
Wow.
And it turned into something because somebody listened. Somebody listened to the drums, what I was playing. And they started playing those tonalities. And off we were.
Yeah. Wow. Did you play with Hammy Blewett?
I never played with Hammy Blewett. Knew him, but never played with him.
You did play with Sunrider, right?
Sunrise was my first gig. And I got the gig playing with Sun Ra, setting in with McCoy at Slugs.
Really? What was it like playing with Sun Ra?
I'm still using
the Sun Ra Arkestra.
Arkestra.
Yeah.
I'm still using the concepts that I learned from Sun Ra.
Wow.
When I first heard Sun Ra and saw his band, the physical pictures of his band, I said, I could never play with those guys. Those guys are out there. They really out there. I could, But
somebody told me Parliament that Funker got the concept from Sun Ra.
the dress.
Yeah, the
dress.
Wow.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Wow. With the
Fifth
mothership.
Dimension.
Yeah. Wow. So he influenced a lot of
He
people.
influenced a lot of people.
What kind of cat was he?
Sun Ra was a mystic. He was a true mystic.
Really?
Yeah, Sun Ra. Well, I'll tell you how I got the gig. I was setting in with McCoy. Al Muzan was the drummer. Sonny Fortune was playing alto saxophone. And Calvin Hill played bass and McCoy. So I played a couple tunes with them. And as soon as I leave the stage, somebody comes over to me. I'm standing at the jukebox, leaning against the jukebox watching the band. And the guy come up to me and said, man, I like the way you play. You got a nice sound. He said, would you be interested in playing with Sun Ra? And yeah. I said, yeah, I would. Because I first thought about, damn, Sun Ra's out there, but I need a gig.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, yeah, I did. He said, okay, well, meet me at Penn Station tomorrow at 12 noon and bring your drums. That's how I got in the band with Sun Ra.
At Penn Station and bring your drums?
And bring my drums. So those who lived in New York, got the train to Philly, and we played my first gig with Sun Ra was at the Empty Foxhole.
Wow.
In Philly. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Empty. It was in. I think it was in the.
I'm not familiar with the Foxhole. I'm familiar with Penn Station.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was so I got the train to Philly, and I played the gig, and the gig lasted all weekend, and I stayed at the house where all of the band lived, John Gilmore and Marshall Allen and all the guys,
Wow.
And Sun Ra was the type of person that when you visited him in his room, he had books everywhere. He had books all over his bed. He was always reading, and he was always pontificating. He was always giving information about the mystic side of life that most of us weren't aware of. And everything that he said was true, actually. It was fact. I mean, but he stood by the fact that he was not born on Earth. He came from the planet Saturn.
Wow.
But who's to, I know that when he was born Sonny Blunt. And we used to call him Sonny, actually. And he had a way of always knowing what was going on intuitively. And I'm told, and others in the band told me this, that there's two occasions. One occasion, did you ever see someone that was in the band and they were standing on steps to play this gigantic big drum that they stood and played with big L sticks?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was from the trunk of a tree that fell on his car. And Sun Ra told him, it was getting ready to storm outside. He said, I think you should move your car. And he didn't go out there and move his car. He said, you should move your car. And he didn't move his car. Lightning hit the car. Lightning hit the tree and it fell over and destroyed his car. So he just did something creative and made a drum out of it.
Wow.
There was another occasion, and this bogs the mind because a lot of people don't want to think that this is real, that it really happened. But Sun Ra proved to the band, I wasn't there, but I was told this, that he had communication with ETs.
Wow.
And so when you hear Sun Ra do solo piano on electric keyboard, it sounds like space. It sounds like a rocket.
He said space is the place.
Space is the place. So he did some manipulations with sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he did that, he told them to go and look out the window and look up in the sky. And there was a spacecraft in the sky.
Wow.
Now, I'll say again, I wasn't there,
Yeah,
but
but
everybody in the
definitely
band that was there told me about
Wow.
it. He didn't tell me about it.
Yeah. I got to see him one time at UDC when he came, 88, around that time. But it was just,
Space.
yeah, it was.
When you're in Sunrise Band, you get picked up and taken with it's like the mothership.
Yeah.
You go where the mothership goes.
Yeah.
What you play is the exact thing that needs to be played at the time, and you're wondering where it came from.
Wow. Was the late brother Yaya the band when you was?
No, I didn't meet Yaya till I got here, and
Okay.
then years later, Yaya
Yeah.
joined Sunrise Band.
Wow. Beautiful, man. And okay, so let's move along. At some point, you decide to come to D.C., Washington, D.C. area. Mm-hmm. What compelled you to come to D.C.?
My wonderful, beautiful wife.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you meet Baiyina in New York, or did you?
I met her in Buffalo.
Okay, you met her in Buffalo.
We dated in Buffalo.
Okay.
And then she came down here to go to school.
Okay.
And when she left a month before my first trip to Europe,
Okay.
I went on a tour to Europe. And then she came here a month before that.
Okay.
And got in school. And then I saw the need that the handwriting on the wall was that I needed to leave Buffalo.
Okay.
But I was going back to New York. But since she came here, I decided to come here and use this as a base and such a commute between here and New York City.
So what year?
That was 1977 that I
What
relocated.
What was it like in D.C. when you got? What was the scene?
Oh, a lot of music. Man, when I first came here, it's the first year the WPFW came on the air.
Oh wow. Okay.
And WPFW was very important then because they played all the music, avant-garde. They played the spectrum, the full spectrum of African American classical music.
Yeah.
And also, in I think it was October of '77, there was a bass player that I did not know, whose name was Billy Taylor, who had died. And I heard on WPFW that there was going to be a memorial for him by all the musicians were going to show. You know how we do.
Yeah.
And it was going to be at the Shoreham Hotel. So I showed up there. I said, well, let me get an idea of who's here. And I went and I checked everybody out. Everybody was there. I mean, especially the older cats. I mean, Buck Hill, Dick Morgan, don't forget the blues, Nat Turner.
All the cats.
All the Harris. What's his name?
Not Bill Harris.
Bill Harris.
Bill Harris.
Bill Harris. Keeter Betts. You know, I went to Keeter and said, "Man, you remember me, man?" Because I played with him in Ella's band.
Ella Fitzgerald.
Ella Fitzgerald. At the last minute, their drummer had a heart attack, and I was called to come in and play with Ella. And what's his name was on? Yeah, I go forget names again. Was on piano. Keeter Betts, and I also played with Roy on trumpet, who came before Dizzy.
Roy Eldridge.
Roy Eldridge. He was on the gig.
Wow.
And who's the cat that played on Giant Steps piano? What's his name, man?
It'll come.
Y'all know who it is. But anyway, I at the last minute I was asked to play that gig, and I played that gig, and that's where I met Keeter, and that was in '76.
A year before you came.
A year before I came here.
So you asked him, did he remember you?
Yeah, when I got here, and he did actually. You know, and from that gig. There was a promoter in the audience that saw me play that gig and then called me to sub for Grady Tate with Hank Jones and Milt Hinton for 3 nights, sitting in for Grady Tate until he could get to the gig because he had a recording session he couldn't do. So I did that gig, and fortunately that gig was documented which is online now because they did a live broadcast one of the nights from a Toronto radio station.
Wow.
And so I found out, but I recorded it, but then I found out it was recorded.
Wow.
So I was glad to have it's online now.
Wow.
But they took me to school.
Wow.
Hank Jones and Mildred Hinton took me to school.
So I came to D.C. 10 years after you got here. So did the community welcome you? Like, did you feel like you?
Some did, some didn't.
Okay.
See, when I came to Washington, I was already a band leader. So Joe Ford and myself and another tenor saxophone player by the name of Paul Gresham had a band that we named Birthright, and we released 2 albums.
Oh, wow.
And we had our own recording company. We had our own business. We formed a partnership between
Really?
Paul Gresham, Joe Ford, and myself. That's how I learned the business. I learned the recording business dealing with Birthright.
Wow.
And it wasn't until our second album that I had my first composition that was published.
Okay.
That's when I started learning about publishing and all that.
Yeah.
And so when I came here, I wanted to not deal with leading a band. I wanted to be a side band again, but there were cats who were standing ahead of me. There was Mike Smith, drummer. There was Hugh Walker, drummer. There was Steve Williams, drummer.
Yeah.
There was Bernard Sweetney, drummer, vibist. You know, they were all ahead of me, and they were getting the gigs.
Gotcha.
And so I said, well, in order to really put my name among these names, I got to go back into band leading, which when I formed SUPERNOVA. When I lived in Buffalo, SUPERNOVA did only 2 gigs, and that was in '76. And it wasn't until '78, '79, actually, that I started to reform SUPERNOVA, and that was my band, and would bring in Joe Ford and Jerry Eastman, who played guitar and also played bass.
Yeah.
And I did some gigs on the East Coast with that band.
Wow. We're gonna talk about SUPERNOVA.
Okay.
But before we get to that, how'd you meet bassist James King?
I met him on that gig that was going on at the Shoreham Hotel to memorialize Billy Taylor, bassist Billy Taylor.
Okay.
And he was the one that was closest to my age that showed some promise to me. In other words, that thought like I did. I could tell by the way he played bass that,
Y'all formed a friendship.
A very deep friend. I went up to him and I said, man, I like the way you sound. My name is Nasar Abadey. And he introduced himself to me. I said, and we're going to play together, man. Give me your number. So it was about 6 months later, I might have called him because I brought Olu Dara down to D.C. Space at the time. Olu Dara is Nas's father. And he and I played together in Doug and Gene Carnes' band. I brought him here, and I asked him to play the gig with us.
And y'all formed the friendship has grown.
For 44 years.
44 years?
44 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Some people just have that.
Right.
Yeah. It's just,
we're a matching pair, man.
Yeah.
We understand each other.
Yes.
We got this groove that happens.
Yeah.
We read each other's mind,
Yeah, that's You mentioned SUPERNOVA. We're going to talk about SUPERNOVA. And before we do that, I remember something you told me that stuck with me. You said, let your audience grow with you. Yeah, that stuck with me because what do you mean by that?
Well, I feel you have to treat your audience just like what we're doing now. Treat your audience as though they're sitting in your living room by a fireside, having tea, coffee, wine, having brunch, talking, and make them feel a part of your development, and that they are a part of your development, and that you recognize them as being those who are helping you to document your work.
Gotcha.
And to also give you feedback about the worthiness of your work.
Beautiful. So, when you formed your band, SUPERNOVA. Is that where you learned that concept from? Or did it, and when you record it, when you document it, your recorder is what you're going to talk about. Because, somehow we are, if you feel like, oh, I ain't ready to record, I need to get this together, when did that come to you?
It's interesting you say that, and I'll, before I answer that question directly, I'll bring up an incident where Woody Shaw conveys that when he played with, he recorded with Eric Dolphy, and Iron Man, the album Iron Man, and he said that he was traveling with a band, and a family invited him over to dinner, and they put that record on while he was, he said he immediately got up from the table and went to the bathroom until the record was over because he was so embarrassed with his playing.
Wow.
But if you go back and listen to that, Woody was killing it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's so.
So there isn't one album or one recording that I've done that I'm satisfied with.
We are our hardest critic.
We are our hardest critic.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that it doesn't belong out there so that your audience can watch you grow.
Yes. Love it.
But I have one in a can now that's not coming out.
Okay.
I don't like it.
Really?
No, I don't like it. I'm playing differently. So I have a new way to play those songs.
So you invested in it and you're not going to put it out?
Yeah. It may come out at some point in time.
Because to me, at my age now, and you're my senior, but it's about leaving on your legs, good, bad,
I agree.
It's about, okay, this is what I
agree with that.
Yeah. So
I agree with that. But on this particular, and you'll probably hear it at some point in time, on this particular CD or recording that I did, I'm paying homage to someone else. I'm not focusing on my sound.
Gotcha.
I'm focusing on someone else's sound. And so therefore you can't really make the right impression if you're trying to imitate someone else.
Yeah.
Excuse me one moment. It's my banker.
We can always edit that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Well, that's a way to look at it.
Yeah.
Or I'm giving you another way to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I look at a lot of stuff that Miles
we
came
don't
out
know.
with.
We don't like the artist may not know which
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it might be you might got some gems in that thing.
Well, Josh Evans, trumpeter Josh Evans is on it. And he said, man, when you going to come out with that, man? That stuff is bad, man.
Wow.
I said, well, man, I got to go back and listen and revisit and listen again. But there are some nice moments on there,
Maybe put out some singles with it.
I could put out a single.
Yeah.
I could put out a single.
Anyway, well, I look forward to hearing the bootleg copy.
But I've approached another way of playing.
Mm-hmm.
I've reached the age where I now want to commit full time to developing that because tomorrow is not promised.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, we find ourselves being in a place where we're playing to try to please this person or that person or that group or this group or to try to get some CD sales or whatever.
Yeah.
But now I'm at the age where that doesn't matter. What matters now is how I feel about how music should be played, how I should play it, and what the intention is.
Yes.
And my intention is to heal. And you cannot heal if you don't have the intention to heal. There are folks who we admire, who are our heroes, whose intention is just to make money.
Yeah.
And so their healing or their spiritual content is only going to reach a certain level.
Gotcha.
And so I'm at the point now where I feel like John Coltrane and Duke Ellington, where I want to focus on healing the planet
Well, you have a license to heal.
I have a license to heal.
What is multi-D?
Multidimensional, multidirectional, simultaneously. So you might hear any us coming from, and to say it short is multi-D. So you might hear us come from any direction, or you might hear me drive the band in a certain direction, and they get it and will go, or I will hear someone in the band go in a certain direction, and I will go there with them to help to embellish.
Gotcha. And so the band SUPERNOVA, you are the founder.
Yes.
What is the concept?
SUPERNOVA.
The name, first of all, is that the star?
It's a star.
And so why'd you choose that name, SUPERNOVA?
Well, I chose it because I liked the album of Wayne Shorter of the same name, SUPERNOVA.
Okay.
And I started studying supernovas.
Okay.
And a supernova is a star that has burned out and explodes.
Okay.
All of us, it unleashes genetic material throughout interstellar space. So all of creation is the remnants of a supernova.
Wow.
And so supernova is a star that explodes. However, like I mentioned about the earlier in our conversation, the galaxy where this black hole exists, 250 million light years away, the telescopes can probably still see the light emanating towards us. So the light of a supernova continues even after the star is burned out.
Wow.
And so the music of the band SUPERNOVA still should linger in the listener's mind, in their ear, in their head, as they leave the concert. They still, okay, buy the CD, but you still hear the music. You still are impressed by the music. And on 2 occasions, in Brother Oz band, the late Brother Oz, and in my band, SUPERNOVA, the same thing happened where a person came to me after the concert and said, "Thank you for your music tonight, because before I came to this concert, I was contemplating suicide."
Wow.
That's healing. If you can heal 2 people like that.
Yeah.
You can heal
200.
You can heal through your music, but you have to have the intention to heal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of music out there that's beautiful, but the intention is not there to heal. The intention is to make money and to sit by your swimming pool.
Yeah, that's heavy. And that you've come to a place in your life, and I think Train came to that place where you are self-validating.
Thank you.
You know, a lot of people doing things to be validated by other musicians.
That's right. That's right.
People in the industry.
Right.
The girls.
The girls.
But when you get to that place where you're self-validating, your intention begins to shift into something else.
Yes.
And there's a certain authenticity that comes out.
It's pure. It's pure.
Yeah.
It's pure.
Yeah,
it's
man.
Pure.
So
it's pure.
now the first I'm trying to find a big word. Can't find one. The first group of SUPERNOVA, right? Who were the band members?
The band members in the first gig that we did, SUPERNOVA in Buffalo, was Tommy Schumann on piano, who plays with Spiral Gyra now. Jerry Eastman on bass. Greg Millard.
Jerry Eastman?
Jerry Eastman, yeah, but he switched to guitar, but he plays bass. He's a bass player.
Oh,
when I met Jerry, he was a bass player.
I didn't know that.
He was an electric bass player.
Yeah.
But we needed him to play upright bass on our, and he joined the band Birthright. He joined Birthright a week before we went in the studio. It was almost like what Miles said, "We're gonna record the Miles show up in the recording studio." And he tell Wayne, "Bring your book."
Wow. Yeah.
You know. So he just showed up, but a week before we said, "Man, we're going to need you to play upright bass." He said, "Well, man, get it together, man. So he played a couple songs, most of the songs on upright bass and one song on electric.
Now the band is
Joe Ford, James King, Alan Johnson, and Josh Evans. Josh Evans.
Beautiful.
On the last reiteration of the band, because of the
That's
pandemic.
what I was. Iteration. That's the word I was looking for. That's the big word I was looking for.
That's what I'm going to try to think of this piano player that I played with. But anyway, we played in this space here, and I had Sean Jones on trumpet, and Brian Settles on tenor saxophone. Yeah.
You also have a SUPERNOVA chamber orchestra.
Yes.
Now, just briefly, what is that?
It's SUPERNOVA surrounded by a string quartet.
Wow.
So I added strings.
Okay. Did you write music for them?
A couple of them, a couple of songs I did write strings.
Wow. Beautiful.
And that's not to say I'm great at writing for strings. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
But I use software, composing software, and
how's that experience been?
That is one of the greatest experiences that I had, because my next project, I don't really want to say what one of my next projects is going to be string heavy. Cool. And I'm putting together the music for it now.
Beautiful.
But it also, I added voice.
Okay.
A vocalist.
Beautiful. And
in both iterations I had the vocals of Nasar Abadey, and
wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And Christy played with the big band.
We're going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. The Washington Renaissance Orchestra.
Of which you are a member.
Yes. And what inspired you to? That's a big band. That's a larger ensemble.
That's a big band. Yeah. I never thought that I could or would lead a big band. Mm-hmm. One of the questions that I had to answer when I first started just leading a band, period, was, how are you going to lead a band? There's two ways to lead a band from the drum chair. You can compose the music and play it, or you can organize it and hire somebody to be your arranger.
MD, musical director, yeah.
And so when I first formed the band, I had some songs, but I still wasn't the main composer of the songs. Mm-hmm. And so my first CD included other people's songs. On my second CD, most of the songs were mine, except for a standard that we did.
Gotcha.
You know, and so now I've got a lot of music I'm ready to record in a lot of different configurations. So I have to figure out what I'm going to do and all that. But the big band happened because in maybe 2005 or somewhere around there, when they were doing the D.C. Jazz Festival, was called the Duke Ellington Jazz Festival at the time, and Bill Brower,
the late Bill
Brower, and Charles Fishman, who was the executive producer of the Jazz Festival, would have me to be a part of a big band that they put together, and they call it a Big Band Jam.
Okay.
At the Lincoln Theater. And after doing that a couple years, it turned out that it's sort of Bill Brower would come to me and say, I need you to put the band together.
Gotcha.
And then I started putting the band together, and then it so happened that when Barack Obama was elected president, that I was asked to put a big band together. Yeah. And I said, okay, so I called all of you guys.
Yeah.
We did it, and we brought in George Duke. And
a lot of fun. Big Harry, put that.
Well, that was Harry. Harry
Bass.
Harry Bass. But the vocalist, we had George Duke, who played piano, came in.
Oh,
and we had
not me.
And we had.
I
know, man. We're at that age now. I know. and we had
Not neither.
No, but very fine vocalist. Cassandra.
Not Cassandra.
Was it Cassandra?
It wasn't Cassandra. It was oh man.
Yeah. It wasn't Melissa. It was doggone it. It's going to come to me. It's going to. So anyway, we had her front the band as well. And from that point on, we ran into some issues with Harry Bass, as you well know. But we had other opportunities, and I was asked to bring the band here and there, and I would just call upon y'all services, and we continued as a big band, but we changed the name to the Washington Renaissance Orchestra. And I called it Renaissance because, first of all, the landmass is Washington, D.C. Renaissance because it's new. It was made up of all younger players than me and all more experienced with playing big band and writing and arranging and composing for big band. And it's turned into a wonderful experience. The pandemic has sort of slowed down that project.
It's still
there. All I got to do is make calls, pick up the phone. We got a gig here and there. And I've always, my biggest challenge and goal was always to pay the musicians better than what they made in other big bands.
And we thank you for that.
I thank you too. I thank you for being there. Yes.
So we're gonna close. We're gonna hurry up and come to a close. But I want to share some of your accomplishments.
Oh.
Okay, and maybe have a few other questions. Okay, you mentioned that you had 2 recordings, Mirage, and Diamond in the Rough. And you got something in the can that you
something in the can.
Yeah. Okay. and was that Supernova? That
yes.
Okay, under the band. Okay.
Right. Yes.
So, how are those 2 recordings different? Are they?
Diamond in the Rough is a larger ensemble.
Okay.
And the title track, Diamond in the Rough, had 4 horns.
Okay.
And on one of the selections on Sacred Space, it had 2 horns and harp.
Okay.
Rashida Jolly played harp.
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah.
What's just a few places you're international? You've performed around different places. What's some of the places you played around the world?
I've played. Let us say that I've played in at least 20 countries.
Wow.
I've been to Africa twice. Beautiful. I've been to Europe several times. Mostly the international gigs have been in Europe. Most of the countries there, except at the time what was behind the Iron Curtain, I didn't have a chance to go there. But, Germany and further north, Scandinavia and Holland and France and Spain and England.
Wow. So would you say you made a success of yourself?
I would say so far I've been successful doing that. I'm looking forward to getting to, I want to go to Asia. Okay. I've never been to Asia.
I was there about a little over a year ago.
Did you get some suits that we had that jacket made?
No, but I could have. There was people trying to get me to get one, but
That's one of the reasons why I want to go. I want to get some suits made. That's,
you can get it over there.
Yeah. Shirts, suits.
I just want to say a few awards. DC, you won a few awards. DC Jazz Festival Annual Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yes.
Wow. DC Jazz Lobby Honors for DC Jazz Leadership and Service Award.
Yes.
The UBC John Coltrane Black Classical Music Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yes.
DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities Award for Merit and Artistic Performance.
Yes.
Creative Artist Performance Service Award for composition. Wow.
Yes.
Man.
Yes.
So you get some roses on this side of
Well, on this side too. I don't talk about it much. But
that's that's impressive.
I've been very fortunate to do that. And the first time I did write for strings. I won an award to put those compositions that I composed that became the suite for Diamond in the Rough. I rendered those to a string, and I commissioned 2 other people on 2 songs, and one of the songs I put together on strings.
Wow.
Yeah.
You played with some incredible musicians, including Stanley Turrentine.
Yes.
David Sanchez,
David Sanchez.
Charlie Rouse,
Yeah.
Gary Bart, Cyrus Chestnut, Gregory Porter,
Yes.
Frank Morgan,
Yes.
Dizzy Gillespie,
Yeah.
Hank Jones,
Hank Jones. Yeah.
Bobby Hutcherson,
Yes.
and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, there's a whole
Ella
bunch
Fitzgerald.
Ella Fitzgerald. I learned a lot from each one of them.
Man.
Each one of every quarter note that I had with them, I learned something on.
Wow, man, that's beautiful, man.
It's a great legacy. And now I'm constantly, young people are just this morning. My daughter, who's in New York right now, visiting Kush, her brother, sent me a text that she was talking with a musician that Kush was playing with last night, who told her, "Yeah, I was just watching your father on a video with Kenny Kirkland." It's the one time that I was documented playing with Kenny.
Wow.
At BET, myself and Michael Bowie.
Yeah.
And a lot of young people come to me and say, "Yeah, I saw you playing with Kenny Kirkland."
Wow, beautiful, man.
Yeah.
You also are a professor of jazz percussion in the jazz study department at the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. What has that experience been like?
Well, they've given me more responsibility because now I have a jazz combo that I teach, and I teach a jazz analysis history that I've been teaching for 3 years.
Wow.
And that has helped me to grow immensely.
How important is education, jazz education?
Well, historically is the most important, because we don't know where we're going if we don't know where we are. And most of us are influenced by the people of the time. In other words, you were influenced by Grover Washington, and I was influenced by Tony Williams. Tony was just a year and a half older than me, so I'm influenced by him, Billy Hart, you know. But then I had to start going back, and I had to listen to Baby Dodds, who played with Louis Armstrong, and Zooty Singleton, who played with Louis Armstrong, and Chick Webb, and another person that I forgot to mention, Kenny Clark, who was the forerunner to Art Blakey and Max Roach, and who is the father of bebop drumming. I should have mentioned him because he's the reason why we're playing like we do and dropping bombs, and we don't play on a hi-hat anymore.
Wow.
You know.
And we have also, speaking of history, we've done some jazz in the school programs, and you get up and you talk about the history.
It's a lot of fun.
And yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
So you've been holding up your end of the bargain.
It's been so much fun. You know, I came to the realization in looking at all of this over the years that I've been involved in this music, that it is an African American music with roots in Africa. And if we don't deal with it from that point of view, we'll be lost, because the blues is the foundation of African American music. And the blues originated in Africa.
Yes.
Now, it may not have been the blues, the 12-bar standard blues form that was started with W.C. Handy's St. Louis Blues. That was the first 12-bar song that standardized the blues into a 12-bar form, but it was based on one chord.
Yeah.
And you could do F7 and just play the blues. D7 just play the blues.
Yes, sir.
And so this taught me, and this is what I had to teach in Africa, that the roots of jazz are in Africa, and the blues originated in Africa, and the next innovation in the music is going to come out of Africa.
Wow.
I sincerely believe that from what the music I heard there, and it already is happening, because we can thank a couple of people. We can go back to New Orleans and thank them for including the African-based music that was in the Caribbean that found its way to New Orleans.
Wow.
And then we can also thank Dizzy Gillespie for having to marry Latin jazz with swing jazz, and through his association with Mario Bowser, who introduced him to Channel Pozo. and the rest is history. So now, when we listen to music today, they call it world music, they call it Latin jazz. It's African American classical music.
Wow.
And the reason why it's African American is because the land base of origin is Africa.
Wow.
And the reason why it's classical, because we've been playing this music, jazz, so-called jazz, for over 150 years. But prior to that, it was blues, which came out of Africa. So it goes all the way back. When I listen to John Coltrane now, I hear John Coltrane playing in the temples of Egypt.
Wow.
Before the Pharaoh. That's what, let my people go. That's what I hear.
Yeah.
That goes back 5,000 years.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Now, that's it. So, I mean, that made me think of the word reincarnation. We ain't gonna go down that rabbit hole. But I know you being a spiritual person, you're more spiritual than, I guess, religious, right?
Yes, I am.
But that could open up that door, that we come back from that past, and there you go.
Well, it's really interesting, and I'd like to designate the difference between religiosity and spirituality. Religiosity is when you're caught up in following rituals that are formulated by your form, the form of religion that you follow. And there's nothing wrong with religion, because there are many people who are attached to a certain religion and they are spiritual, but they want to stay attached to those rituals and to those dogmas that exist along with that, the doctrine. However, spirituality is when you believe that there is a higher force and that all the religions emanate from that higher source.
Yes.
And that we sort of give our due to that spirit, that infinite spirit. And so that's what I deal with when I speak to God.
Wow.
You know, God is a noun, but the name of God is I am. That is I am.
Yes, sir.
I am that I am, and that is God. So if you ask God what his name is or her name, and I don't think of God as he or she, because we're in this environment is duality.
Yeah.
But in the higher realms of spiritual existence, there is no duality. There is a oneness.
Wow.
So we are one. So I don't equate God with the big G as being he or she. I relate to the infinite spirit as what it is, the infinite spirit that is the source of all creation.
Yes. And I always say my religion is I don't know. But I believe in the divine.
That's right.
You know, the Most High.
That's right.
And we whatever that is.
That's right.
And,
that's right.
follow it from within.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
Yeah. So I have a few more questions.
Okay.
And we're gonna close it out. As long as I've known you, you've always been about eating, diet, I don't know what you call it, the vegan, vegetarian, but you don't eat pork chops. I tried to get you to eat a beef chop and
chicken wings.
Yeah. How has diet and your healthy lifestyle that you live impacted your life and your music?
I decided to change my diet when I became ill, and when I was 26 years old. I came down with Bell's palsy, and Bell's palsy is when a right side or left side of your face paralyzes. In my case, the right side of my face paralyzed.
Wow.
And I was walking around, I was talking like.
And it just happened out of the blue?
I felt it. I felt it when it happened. I had to go upstairs and look in the mirror and say, "What's wrong?" And I couldn't close my eye. and it happened in the wintertime. I had to wear a patch over my eye because in Buffalo the wind blows, and man, your eyes water and all that kind of. So I dealt with that, and I went to 4 doctors, and the first doctor told me, "Well, you got Bell's palsy." I said, "Okay, man, give me a penicillin shot and let me be on my way." He said, "No, you don't understand. There's no cure for Bell's palsy. We can't give you a flu shot or this." I said, "Well, how am I going to get? What's going to? You got to wait it out. It can last anywhere from a month to a year, and usually if it lasts for a year, you're not going to get rid of it. You're going to walk around like this, and your eye over." And when I went to sleep, my eye wouldn't close.
Wow.
And so I went to 4 doctors. They all told me the same thing, except the last one told me, now, wait a minute, let me retrace. When I lived in New York, I was doing everything. And I ran my health down and my immune system down doing everything.
Gotcha.
And so, but before I moved to New York, when I met Herbie and his band, they were all vegetarian, the Saxtet. They were all vegetarians. So I adopted vegetarianism because I thought that was the thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so, but I didn't do it to the degree that I do now. I wasn't reading labels. I wasn't concerned with everything that I ate. I just knew that if it don't have meat, I ain't eating it. Right, right. Couple that with the fact that I ran my resistance down, traveling around, living in New York, eating bad food, all the other things that go along with being a jazz musician. Mm-hmm. And I developed Bell's palsy, which caused me to have to retreat back to Buffalo, get my act together. It took me a minute to get together. Mm-hmm. And while there was when we formed Birthright. And so that's why I didn't go back to New York right away, because we had formed Birthright, and my life had become, I want to make this band be successful. So
now this is after the Bell's palsy cleared?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the last doctor said, what you should do, you need to get a lot of rest. You need to take vitamin B complex. You need to drink a lot of water. And I suggest you might want to consider being a vegetarian, from a doctor. So I was already a vegetarian, so-called vegetarian. So what I did was I went back eating meat. And I said, I'm just going to research this. I went back to eating meat. I researched it and for a year. And I came to the point where I felt confident enough to become vegetarian again. I played a concert at the University of Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh, and my grandmother, I stayed with my grandmother who was alive then. She prepared for me my very last meat meal, which was lamb chops. I can still taste them. My grandmother was a cook, man. And that was November of 1974.
Wow.
And that's the last time I had meat. And so I decided I would be a vegetarian from that point on. And then prior to when Kush was born, I decided to step it up to veganism, which means that I'm not eating any meat byproducts at all. Yeah. And I fast a lot. I do a lot of fasting, 21-day fast.
Man, you have a lot of discipline. I tried it.
But see, have you ever been sick?
No, not really. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So there's nothing driving you.
Yeah.
This is what drove me to do this.
Yeah.
And I can walk down the street now, smell some meat, smell good. I remember one time we were over in, Paul Carr and I were with a contingent group that was.
So these foods still smell good.
We got to remember that it's the seasoning that we smell. It's not the meat. It's the seasoning. So you can season any other the tofu or any other protein like you season meat, and it still tastes good.
Gotcha.
But I remember we were over in Italy, and Paul Carr was saying to me, he said, "Man, you smell that meat, man? Don't that meat smell good to you?" I said, "The seasoning smell good to me." I'll never forget that. And Paul said, "Oh, okay, man, I get it."
Because he's a vegetarian too. Right?
Now he is.
Yeah,
he wasn't.
He
then.
wasn't then. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Well,
so this has been my life.
Yeah, man.
Vegetarian.
And you look well.
Well,
You
thank
look.
you.
I mean, not well. You look great.
Well, thank you. Thank
You
you.
know.
Thank you.
Now, I got to ask you. Are you handsome?
Well, my wife told me this morning I was. She did tell me this morning. She said you're still handsome.
Yeah. No, you look good, man.
Thank you.
And I don't. Do you tell people your age?
I'm 74.
Yeah, man. You look great.
I'm 74.
Man,
I'm
well,
74.
how do you feel?
I feel like I'm 54,
Yeah.
44.
There you go.
You
Beautiful.
know, yeah. I feel good.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. Next, what's in the future for Nasar Abadey? You mentioned briefly mentioned something.
Now knee deep into down the rabbit hole in studying harmony.
Studying harmony.
Studying harmony, and I'm studying piano. And as a matter of fact, I have a lesson today, and I've become very, very much more understanding.
Vince Evans tells me, that he's giving you piano. He's giving you piano.
I study piano with Vince, and he studies drums.
And he's studying. That's called bartering.
Bartering. And it's got a rhythm to bada boom.
Yeah. And man, that's another thing I really appreciate about you, man. You've always, been learning, always learning. I mean, you were in UDC. I remember you at, and later in life, studying, still learning, and which is the example that the elders should set. That
there's always something to learn.
Yeah, man,
and
we see that young people. I was younger at the time.
Yeah, well,
I'm getting there.
You're still younger, man.
You look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you say, "Oh, you coming back to get your degree or to take less, whatever." But I remember you.
And I'm still working on some studies because I was going to University of Maryland Global Campus, and I was over there for a few semesters when I was contracted by Peabody Institute to help build, or to work with the IT department to build an online jazz history course.
Wow.
Which I've been working on for the last 10 months. So I had to put my scholastic thing aside to do that. But that has been a learning process because I'm gaining material that I'm going to put together in a book. My whole thing was, well, how do I make my book different from everyone else's? Mm-hmm. And I've sort of figured it out. So
when you say a book,
I'm working on a jazz history book.
Okay.
But let's put it like this. I've compiled in my research so much information that I want to share with the general public from my point of view.
Gotcha.
As a practitioner rather than just a historian.
Beautiful, man. We're looking forward to that.
I am too. Thank you.
Final question. Mm-hmm. How can people contact you or learn more about your music and what you're doing? You can look right in the camera and tell the people.
Call me. You can reach me. My website is NasarAbadey.com. That's spelled NasarAbadey.com. And there I have my gigs are listed, my activity is listed, background, or any other information that you might want. Also, you can purchase CDs that I have or tracks that I have from there. And you can also become a member so that when I do gigs or any other events that you want to know about, I will let you know. And I'm going to start a blog, too.
Beautiful.
I'm going to start a blog.
Well, my brother, man, this has been a very informative, deep conversation.
Thank you.
Which I kind of suspected. Just knowing you.
Well, thank you, man.
And our conversations.
I am so grateful that you have had me here, especially in view of the other folks that you've had prior to me.
Yeah.
And all those interviews are very well done.
Thank you.
I'm hoping for great success to come to you, from this endeavor because we need someone of our own that is a practitioner to document, and now you have it. You have the opportunity, like Art Taylor did with his book.
Wow.
Where he interviewed musicians.
Yeah.
And it's very important that this is done by somebody that understands the music, and not by someone that just writes about the music and may not know where middle C is on the piano. But it is important that someone like yourself does this, and I'm very happy and honored to be here and invited here.
Thank you, man, and I appreciate it. And that's what this is, man. I see the value. Sometimes, people think we just get up on stage.
I know.
And do what we do,
I know.
But they don't know there's a big story behind all this. So, part of the tradition. Well, probably in all traditions, you have the storytellers.
Yes.
And they would excite the imagination of the younger folks. And so our concept here is we're promoting jazz through telling the stories.
That's it. And
so
working perfectly.
That's what a conversation in jazz is about. And I'm we ain't really talking all music. We talking philosophy. What'd you go through? How'd you get here? And so that's what But I'm glad you. I'm really appreciative of those words, man.
Thank you.
And again, thank you
for
being here, man. And this is a good one.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. You've been listening to the great Mr. Nasar Abadey. This is a conversation in jazz, and we'll see you on the next one.